Hey there, I am so excited for today. We are going to be doing something that I don't typically do on my channel. I am going to be showing you 50, yes, I said 50 of the most popular, most liked recipes here on my channel. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's go get started. We're kicking today off with this delicious lemon chicken orzo. To the pan on my stove, I added in a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of olive oil. Once the butter melted down and the oil was hot, I added in a half of a white onion that I diced. I gave this a stir and I let the onion cook for about 5 to 7 minutes or until it started to get soft. Now that the onion's soft, I tossed in a tablespoon of minced garlic along with a teaspoon of Italian seasoning and 1 cup of orzo. I gave this a stir and I let this cook together for about a minute or so. If you don't know what orzo is, it is kind of like a pasta slash rice mixture. It's the shape of rice, but it kind of tastes like pasta, if that makes sense. But then I added in 2 cups of chicken broth along with 1 cup of heavy whipping cream and the juice from 1 lemon. I gave this a stir, then I let this simmer on my stove uncovered for about 10 minutes. I did stir it frequently though, just to ensure that the orzo didn't stick to the bottom of my pan. But now that our orzo is nice and tender, I'm going to add in our 2 cups of cooked shredded chicken. I just cooked my chicken up in the Instant Pot. Next, I added in a half a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese and 4 cups of fresh spinach. I gave this a stir and I let the spinach wilt down and the cheese melt. Then it was time to serve it up. Here's my bowl of food. I topped mine with plenty of Parmesan cheese. I really do love this meal because it is very affordable. Also, it's packed full of different nutrients. It has so much spinach in it, which is amazing. Also, my entire family really likes this one, so it is a win-win. Now we're getting started on this zucchini chicken stuffing bake, and some people have mentioned that they don't care for using canned of cream of soups in recipes, so I really wanted to show you this substitute that you could use instead of using canned cream of soups. You could do this for any of my recipes. To the pan on my stove, I melted down 3 tablespoons of butter, then I added in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Once the flour was a nice golden color, I slowly added in 3/4 cup of chicken broth. I did whisk it while adding it in just to ensure that it didn't become clumpy. Now I'm going to pour in my half a cup of milk and whisk it well. For the seasonings, I tossed in half a teaspoon of salt and pepper, and you could always add in 1/4 cup of water at a time, just until this gets to your desired consistency if this is a little bit too thick for you. I set this to the side. We're going to work on our veggies now. I'm cutting my 2 zucchinis into smaller pieces as well as my 1 onion. I set our veggies to the side. We're going to start on our stuffing mixture now. So I have my 1 6-ounce box of stovetop stuffing right here. I added that box into my bowl. Then I added 4 tablespoons of melted butter and I gave this a good stir to coat the stuffing in the butter. I'm removing about 3/4 cup of this stuffing and I'm setting it to the side. We're going to be using this for the top of our casserole. Now I have my replacement to the cream of soup right here. I just added it in, or of course you could add a can of cream of mushroom or chicken soup. Anyways, then I added in 3 cups of shredded rotisserie chicken along with the zucchini and the onion that we cut up earlier. Next, add in a half a cup of sour cream along with a dash of pepper and salt. Give this a really good stir. I have my 9x13 baking dish right here. I made sure to spray it with plenty of nonstick spray. Then I added that casserole right in there. I spread it out as even as possible, and then over the top of the casserole, of course, you will sprinkle the reserved stuffing mixture over it. This will bake in a preheated oven to 350 degrees for about 35 to 45 minutes or until the top is golden brown. Here's my plate of dinner, and all I could say about this one is Oh boy, I could serve this to my family every single week and we would not get tired of it. It's seriously that good. It definitely reminds us of Thanksgiving. And then I served it alongside of a side salad with romaine lettuce and spinach, fresh broccoli, cherry tomatoes, dried cranberries, and a little bit of ranch dressing. Now we're making this pepperoni and cheese Italian pasta salad. To my pot of boiling water, we are going to add in our rotini pasta noodles. I'm adding about a half a pound of that pasta in, and I just cooked it according to the box instructions. While we have our pasta cooking away, we are going to start cutting up our cheese and our veggies. So I cut up about 8 ounces of Colby Jack cheese. I also cut up an English cucumber and 2 cups of cherry tomatoes. Back over to our pasta now that it's cooked through. I brought it over to my over-the-sink strainer and I just dumped it in there, and now I'm rinsing that pasta with cold water. This is my little trick to help that pasta cool down quicker, and I do have this over-the-sink strainer in my description box below the video if you want to get yourself one. I added that pasta into my bowl along with the cheese and the veggies that we cut up earlier. Next, you're going to be adding in a 5-ounce bag of mini pepperonis, followed by about a cup of cooked chicken. I love using this pre-cooked refrigerated chicken. It just makes everything easier. Lastly, you'll add in about a cup and a half of Italian dressing. I like using the Olive Garden Italian dressing, but you could use any type of Italian dressing you like. Give this a stir, put cling wrap over the top, and let this chill in your refrigerator for at least an hour before enjoying it. I really like making this pasta salad on busy nights when we're not able to eat dinner all at the same exact time. I just like to put it into containers like this, so for whoever needs dinner, they could just take a little container out of the refrigerator, and there you go. You have a simple dinner. You don't even have to reheat this one, of course. It's just a cold pasta salad that is delicious. Now we're making these super fun walking tacos that take little to no time to prepare. To the pan on my stove, I added 1 pound of ground beef, or you could use ground chicken or ground turkey, whatever you prefer. I broke that up with my meat masher and I cooked it through. While that was cooking away, I just prepared our veggies. So I cut up our cherry tomatoes, I sliced our lettuce, and I diced our onion. Now that our ground beef is cooked through, I added in about 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning and about half a cup of water. I gave this a stir and I let this simmer together for a few minutes. Now to assemble our walking tacos, you could use any type of chips you like for this recipe. You could use tortilla chips, really any type of chip you like, but we are using these little personalized size bags of nacho cheese Doritos today. We like to break the chips up a little bit and then add the toppings in. So like the ground beef taco mixture, the veggies. We also like to add in salsa, cheese, and sour cream. I do want to let you know, if you want to prepare these ingredients ahead of time, and then you guys assemble these later on whenever you're having dinner, it is easy to do that. I've done that in the past, and it makes dinner time super duper quick at night. Of course, you will just eat these walking tacos straight out of the bag. That's another nice part about this dinner. You will have very minimal dishes on that night, so that is always a win-win. These are so delicious. Now we're making this zucchini skillet, and it is a wonderful lower carb option. So to begin, we're going to cut up our veggies, 1 onion, 2 medium-sized zucchinis, and about a pound of green beans. I did trim those green beans, and I kind of cut them into bite-sized pieces. Now over to the pan on my stove, I added in a tablespoon of olive oil. Once it was hot, I added in that diced onion, along with about a pound of ground turkey. If you don't want to use ground turkey, you could always use ground beef or ground chicken as a substitute. I broke that ground turkey up and I cooked it through. I do want to let you know I have pretty much all the products that I'm using in today's video, like the meat masher and this pan, linked in my Amazon store below the video for you. But once that ground turkey was cooked through, I added in a tablespoon of minced garlic along with our seasonings, a half a teaspoon of salt and pepper, a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, half a teaspoon of oregano and paprika. I gave this a really good stir. Go ahead and toss in your 14-ounce can of fire-roasted diced tomatoes at this point, or you could use regular diced tomatoes, whatever you prefer, but those fire-roasted tomatoes do have a little extra flavor. Then I tossed in our green beans and our zucchini along with a half a cup of chicken broth. I let this simmer on low, and I did stir it frequently until the zucchini and the green beans were nice and tender. It took about 10 minutes, I'd say, but now that they're to the tenderness that I like them to be, I gave this a last stir, and then I added about a cup of mozzarella cheese on top. You could add more or less mozzarella cheese, whatever you like. I let the cheese melt down, and then it was time to enjoy it. I do want to let you know, even if you're not the biggest zucchini or green bean fan in the world, I really still think you gotta give this recipe a shot, just because all the different flavors in this meal together are out of this world good. It is just so delicious. This one's a really fun one. Now we're making some of my all-time favorite pizzas. To my sheet pan, I lined it with parchment paper. Then I added my pizza crust, which is naan bread. This naan bread is like a simple alternative to having to make your own pizza crust. But I used the roasted garlic flavored naan bread, but you could also use the regular original flavor. To the bottom of the naan bread, I added a little bit of marinara sauce, or you could use pizza sauce, or really whatever type of sauce you want for your pizza. Over that, I added fresh slices of mozzarella cheese, or you could use pre-shredded mozzarella cheese. I've just found over the years that the fresh mozzarella cheese melts down better and it has a little bit better flavor. Over the cheese, I added slices of pepperoni, and then on the very tip top, I sprinkled Italian seasoning just for some extra flavor. This baked in a preheated oven to 400 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes, or until the cheese was nice and melty. Here's what it looks like out of the oven, and if you've never made pizza with naan bread before, oh boy, you certainly need to. Just because it tastes like you took hours and hours trying to make this pizza, but seriously, it takes less than 15 minutes to throw together. It is amazing. Now we're making these chicken and rice burritos. So to the pan on my stove, I have about 2 tablespoons of hot olive oil in there. To the oil, I added 1.5 pounds of cubed chicken breast, and I seasoned it with a tablespoon of taco seasoning, or you could use any type of seasoning that you love. I gave this a stir to coat the chicken in the seasoning, and I let the chicken completely cook through at this point. Once our chicken was completely cooked through, I added in this 8.5-ounce bag of Spanish-style rice with quinoa, peppers, and corn. I found this package at Costco, and I think it tastes pretty good. Then I added in 2 tablespoons of water. I gave this a stir, and I let this cook all together for about 2 to 3 minutes. To assemble our burritos, I have my flour tortilla right here. Then I added a scoop of that chicken and rice mixture. Of course, you could add any toppings you like to your burrito to make it your own, but I added in a little bit of cheddar cheese, guacamole, sour cream, refried beans, sliced tomatoes, and sliced lettuce. Then I rolled this up to the best of my ability. We like to crisp up our tortillas in my house, so over to the pan on my stove, I sprayed it with a little bit of avocado oil spray, or you could use any type of oil you like. I added my burritos and I cooked them on medium-high heat for about a minute or 2 on each side, or until they were a nice golden brown color. Here are my burritos. These burritos are so good. My husband and I have been making burritos like this for years and years. It's just kind of like a go-to staple in our home. Now we're making this chicken with zucchini and Parmesan cheese with smashed potatoes on the side. We're going to start on the smashed potatoes first. So in this pot of boiling water, I added about 1.5 pounds of golden potatoes. Boil these up and let them become fork tender. I have been getting so many requests to make these smashed potatoes, so I'm excited. Over to the pan on my stove, I have 2 tablespoons of hot olive oil in there. I added my 1.5 pounds of cubed chicken breast, and I seasoned it with a dash of salt, pepper, Italian seasoning, onion powder, and garlic powder. I let the chicken cook through at this point. While we have our chicken cooking away, I am going to dice up our one yellow squash and one large zucchini. Now that our chicken is cooked through, I am going to remove it to a plate and I am going to set this plate to the side. In the same pan that we cooked that chicken in, I added in 2 tablespoons of butter along with a tablespoon of olive oil. Once the butter was melted and the oil was hot, I tossed in that squash and the zucchini. You're also going to be adding in seasonings at this point. I tossed in a dash of Italian seasoning, pepper, salt, and garlic powder, but you could add in any seasonings that you love. Give this a stir, scrape all those flavorful bits off the bottom of your pan, and let the zucchini and squash become soft. Now that my zucchini and squash are to the tenderness that I like them to be, I added back in our cooked chicken along with 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese. Give this a stir, let the cheese melt down, and then it's ready to serve. But now we are going to finish up our smashed potatoes. So now that they are fork tender, I just strained the water out of my pot, and then I set the potatoes to the side to cool down for a second. We're going to work on the butter mixture now. In this bowl, I added in 3 tablespoons of butter. Next, add in 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese, along with 1/2 tablespoon of minced garlic, and then a dash of pepper and salt. Give this a stir. I have my sheet pan here lined with parchment paper. I dumped those potatoes right on my sheet pan, and you are going to smash them now. So I'm using my potato masher and I'm kind of smashing them into smaller pieces. Be careful, you don't want them to fall into 100 different pieces. You don't want them to break apart. Just gently smash them. And then with that butter mixture, you are going to drizzle it over the top and then put this in the oven under the broiler for a couple of minutes until the tops get nice and crispy. Here's what dinner looks like. That chicken and the zucchini and squash have amazing flavor. And then these smashed potatoes are so much fun to make, and they really are so flavorful and good. I also serve this with a side salad with spring mix, tomatoes, feta cheese, and avocado. I've kind of been on a burrito bowl kick recently, so now we're making these slow cooker burrito bowls. To my slow cooker, I added my slow cooker liner, just for easy cleanup. Then I added my 3 large chicken breasts right in there. Next, I'm going to be adding our seasonings in: a teaspoon of chili powder, 1/2 teaspoon of cumin, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. This is going to be really flavorful. Next, I'm adding in the juice from 1 lime. Fresh lime juice really makes this recipe outstanding. And then add in 1 can of Rotel, a can of drained and rinsed black beans, 1 can of drained corn, 2 tablespoons of minced garlic, and 1 red onion. This cooked on low for about 5 to 6 hours, or until the chicken was completely cooked through. But now that we have our chicken cooked through, I'm just going to shred it up. You see here it is so super duper tender. I'm pretty much just shredding it with 1 fork. But after I got that chicken nice and shredded, it was time to assemble our burrito bowls. So in my bowl, I have a little bit of white rice. To the rice, I added some sliced romaine lettuce. Next, that chicken burrito bowl mixture. And then I also topped mine with avocado, tomato, and a little bit of sliced green onion and cilantro. This is the finished product. This meal has so much nutrition in it, and it really is just so easy to make. This is definitely a go-to slow cooker meal for me. Now we're making this sliced sausage with peppers over rice. To begin, to my cutting board, I'm going to slice up 1 red bell pepper, 1 green bell pepper, and 1 onion. Over to my slow cooker, we're going to begin on the sauce now. So to the slow cooker, I added in a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, 1/4 cup of chicken broth. Then for the seasonings, a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of fennel seeds, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder and garlic powder, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of dried oregano. Give this a really good stir. To the sauce, I added in the peppers and the onion that we sliced up earlier, along with a 1-pound package of brats. Normally, I would add in sweet Italian sausage, not brats, but they didn't have sweet Italian sausage at my store, so that's why I just used the brats. I gave this a stir, and this cooked on low for about 6 hours. After the 6 hours of cooking, I removed the sausages, and this is optional, but we do like slicing them into smaller, kind of like bite-sized pieces in my house, so that's what I'm doing now. I placed them back in the slow cooker, then I gave this a really good stir, then it was time to serve it up. We like eating this over a bed of white rice with Parmesan sprinkled over the top, but you could serve this in hoagie rolls, over mashed potatoes, over pasta, or if you want to make it lower carb, you could serve this over cauliflower rice, but this has amazing flavor. Now we're getting started on this refreshing avocado corn salad. To begin, we're going to dice up all of our veggies, and I do want to let you know, if you don't care for any of the specific veggies that I'm using for this recipe, you could always use different veggies that you love. So I first diced up an English cucumber, 1 red onion, about a cup of cherry tomatoes, 3 avocados, then about 1 to 2 ears of corn. And fresh corn is perfectly safe to eat. It has a ton of nutritional benefits in it, so you don't have to boil it first or anything. You could just cut it up fresh. I added all of those fresh veggies into this big bowl. Next, I'm going to be adding in the juice from 1 lemon. This lemon juice will give it extra great flavor. And then for the seasonings, I tossed in a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and a half a teaspoon of dried basil. I gave this a stir, and that is all you have to do. This is ready to serve. And here's the finished product. This salad is so fresh and refreshing tasting. You could easily bring this to summer parties and it would definitely be a crowd pleaser. I actually just like eating this by itself for lunch just because it is really truly that good by itself. Now we're making this 1-pan all-in-one breakfast, but you could also make this for dinner, of course. I have my sheet pan sprayed with nonstick spray, and then I added my 1 package of refrigerated hash browns to the pan, along with 2 tablespoons of butter. Then for the seasonings, a half a teaspoon of salt and pepper, a half a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of dried thyme, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of dried basil. I kind of gave this a stir to combine all of the ingredients together. We love bacon in my house, so I have my 12-ounce package of bacon right here. I'm actually slicing it in half, so I'm only using 6 ounces of bacon for this recipe. And I'm placing the half strips of bacon onto my sheet pan. I'm kind of scattering it all around. Then this baked in a preheated oven to 400 degrees for about 22 minutes. After 22 minutes, I removed it from the oven. Now, this is really easy and fun. You are going to crack about 5 eggs all around the sheet pan, just like this, and then after you are finished placing all the eggs around, you're going to season them just with a little salt and pepper. And then on the very top of everything, I added about a half a cup of shredded cheddar cheese. Of course, the cheese is optional. You don't have to add it if you don't want to. And then this baked in a preheated oven to 400 degrees still for an additional 20 minutes or until the eggs were cooked. You could eat this however you choose to do so, but what we like to do is we like to put this hash brown bacon and egg mixture inside of warm tortillas, then we roll them up, and then there you go. You have the easiest breakfast burritos ever. This recipe is so simple to throw together. It will really impress you. Now we're making this Tuscan balsamic chicken. So on my cutting board right here, I have about 1.5 pounds of fresh green beans. I trimmed the ends off the green beans and I kind of cut them into smaller bite-sized pieces. I'll set these green beans to the side. Now in this bag, I have 1.5 pounds of chicken tenderloins. We're going to mix all the ingredients in this bag. If you don't want to mix the ingredients in the bag, you could of course use a bowl, but using this bag will save on dishes and it's just really easy. So To the bag, I also added in 1/4 a cup of olive oil, next 1/4 a cup of balsamic vinegar, and then go ahead and toss in those green beans that we cut up earlier. Now I'm adding in 1.5 cups of cherry tomatoes, and for the seasonings to give this extra flavor, add in a teaspoon of dried basil, a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and then a tablespoon of minced garlic, and lastly 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. All these ingredients together are seriously out of this world good. You gotta trust me. But I zipped that bag up and I'm going to give this a really good shake. So if you're using a bowl, just stir it well. But after I gave this a good shake, I brought it over to my sheet pan lined with parchment paper. I added it to my sheet pan and I spread it out. This baked in a preheated oven to 425 degrees for about 30 minutes or until the chicken was completely cooked. Here's what dinner looks like. Those green beans are so tender and delicious, and that chicken is out of this world good. If you're a big balsamic vinegar fan like I am, you will seriously devour this meal. I really love anything balsamic vinegary in the summertime. It is just spot on good. This one might not look like much, but this ground beef and rice dinner is amazing. So to my Dutch oven, I added 1 pound of ground beef along with 1 diced up white onion. Break the ground beef up and cook it through at this point. Once my ground beef was browned and cooked through, I removed any grease in my pot. Then I added in 1 cup of rinsed, uncooked jasmine rice, followed by 2.5 cups of beef broth, and then for the seasonings, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I gave this a good stir and I let this simmer covered for about 15 to 20 minutes. I did stir it frequently while it was simmering just so the rice didn't stick to the bottom of the pot, but here's what it looks like after it was finished simmering. I added in 3 tablespoons of cream cheese along with 1 cup of marinara sauce. You could use any marinara sauce you like, but I just like the Prego brand. I gave this a stir, let the cream cheese melt down, and then it was time to serve it up. I served ours alongside of steamed peas, and like I said previously, this might not look like much, but it really is packed full of flavor. Even my little toddler Brinley likes this one, and it's kind of like a meal that's easy to throw together when you don't really know what you're gonna make. Now we're making these taco stuffed peppers, and to get this recipe started, you'll need about 2 cups of cooked chicken. I do want to show you how I'm cooking up my chicken in the Instant Pot. It is so easy to do it this way. I added my big frozen chicken breast along with 1 cup of water. I set the valve to sealing and I put this on high pressure for 23 minutes with a quick release, and then there you go. You have really easy to shred chicken. But if you don't want to do it in the Instant Pot, you could always use a rotisserie chicken for this recipe, or you could boil your chicken over a pot of water on the stove. But I set our chicken to the side to get started on the bell peppers. Now I have 6 small to medium sized bell peppers. I cut the tops off and I removed the insides of the peppers. I am going to bring them over to my pot of boiling water, and I'm going to let these bell peppers boil in there for about 6 to 7 minutes to let them get soft. While we have our peppers cooking away, I'm going to start on the filling now. So to this large bowl, I added in our shredded chicken. Next, add in 1 cup of drained and rinsed black beans, 1 cup of cooked white rice. And here's my little trick that I've been doing recently. They sell these rice containers at the grocery store. They're pre-cooked rice containers, and when I only need a little bit of rice for a recipe, I like adding these in just because it's so simple, and so I don't have to cook rice on the side. It's just less effort for me in the summertime. Then I added in 1 cup of salsa and 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning. Give this a really good stir to combine the ingredients. Now that we have our bell peppers nice and fork tender, you do want to make sure they're only fork tender. You don't want them to be too soft so they're falling apart, but I added them into my large casserole dish. Now generously fill our bell peppers with that chicken mixture that we just made up. And I do want to mention to you, if you want to make this into a meatless meal, it is so easy to transform this recipe to a meatless meal because all you have to do is substitute the chicken for more beans. But I topped our bell peppers with a little bit of pepper jack cheese, and I baked this on 400 degrees for about 20 minutes to melt the cheese down and to cook a little bit. Here's what they look like out of the oven. The outside is perfectly tender and the inside is spot on delicious. I also love how you can make this recipe your own so easily. You could always add ingredients to it or subtract ingredients to kind of just make it the way you want it. This one's a super fun one. We are making this pizza pasta bake now. So to my large casserole dish, I am spraying it with plenty of nonstick spray just for easy cleanup. Then I added in 14 ounces of petite diced tomatoes. Next, you'll add in about 1.5 cups of marinara sauce. Per usual, you could use any brand of marinara sauce you like. And then to give this extra flavor, I added in 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and a teaspoon of salt. I gave this a stir and then I set it to the side. We are going to start to work on the chicken now. I have my 2 large chicken breasts right here. I'm going to be slicing them in half horizontally. So now it's going to appear as kind of like 4 chicken breasts. If you've seen any of my other videos, you might know why I like doing this so much, but I like doing it just because the chicken will be so tender in the end, and it will help the chicken cook a little bit quicker. But now to the sauce that we made up a little bit earlier, I am adding our chicken right in there, and I am going to season the chicken with a dash of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to coat the chicken in the sauce. I placed this in a preheated oven to 400 degrees to bake for about 35 to 45 minutes or until the chicken was completely cooked through. But now that our chicken is cooked, I am going to start on the cornstarch slurry just to thicken it up a little bit. In this little bowl, I have a tablespoon of cornstarch. To the cornstarch, I added a tablespoon of water and I gave this a really good stir. I set this to the side, and then I pulled out our baking dish and I'm going to pour the cornstarch slurry all over the top. And then I gave this a little stir. Next, over the top of everything, you're going to sprinkle 1 cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. Now, this is the fun part for the pepperonis. This is optional, but I do like adding them on top. It just kind of is fun. And then I sprinkled a little bit more cheese, and I baked this for an additional 10 to 15 minutes. We love eating this dinner over pasta, so to my pot of boiling water, I added in about 10 ounces of pasta. You could use any type of pasta you like, but we really like using the fun shapes just for this recipe because it's a little bit more fun. But once our baking dish was out of the oven, it was time to serve it up. Here's my plate of food. I served it over the pasta, of course, and with the chicken and plenty of the sauce. This is full of flavor, and I really think this one might surprise you. It really is delicious. I served it alongside of a side salad with spinach, carrots, cherry tomatoes, and feta cheese with a little bit of ranch for the dressing. Now we're making this 1-pan Italian sausage and rice dinner. To the pan on my stove, I have a couple tablespoons of hot olive oil in there. Then I added in 1 pound of ground Italian sausage. You could use any type of Italian sausage you like. I also tossed in 1 white onion that I diced and a tablespoon of minced garlic. I broke that sausage up and I cooked it through. Now that we have our sausage cooked through, we're going to remove it to a bowl lined with paper towels. And the reason why I lined our bowl with paper towels is just to absorb any excess grease from the sausage. Now to the same pan that we cooked our sausage in, we are going to be adding our 1 bag of Knorr creamy chicken flavor rice. I just tossed it right in there. And then you're also going to be adding in 2 cups of water. Give this a really good stir and bring this up to a simmer and let it simmer for about 7 minutes or until the rice is tender. Now we're going to be tossing our cooked sausage back into that pan with the rice, along with a 14-ounce can of Italian-style petite diced tomatoes. Give this a really good stir, let the tomatoes warm through, and then you are going to add your cheese in at the very end. So I'm adding in a half a cup of mozzarella cheese and a fourth a cup of Parmesan cheese, but if you're not a cheese person, just don't add the cheese in. Give this a stir, let the cheese melt down, and then it's ready to serve. Here's my plate of food. This has amazing, rich, bold flavor. This also is a great meal if you want to meal prep it, and it also makes for great leftovers. I served it alongside of a salad. It's actually this creamy dill pickle chop salad kit. I found it at Costco, and my husband and we actually were surprised. We did like it, and we'll be buying it again, so I do suggest it. I haven't made lemon spaghetti in so long, so now we're making this lemon chicken spaghetti. To my pot of boiling water, I added in 10 ounces of spaghetti noodles. I cooked those according to the box instructions. Over to the pan on my stove, I melted down 2 tablespoons of butter. I added in a tablespoon of flour, and I whisked this around until the flour no longer looked white. Now I'm going to add in our tablespoon of minced garlic. Just whisk it until it's fragrant. As you probably know by now, it only takes about 20 seconds for it to become fragrant. Then add in 2/3 cup of chicken broth, whisk this well. Now you're going to add in the juice from 1 lemon. If you don't care for lemon juice, you don't have to add that in. Then add in a cup of heavy cream along with 3 cups of shredded rotisserie chicken. You are going to stir this all together. Now add in your 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese along with a half a teaspoon of pepper and a teaspoon of salt. Stir this all together so the cheese melts down. To thin out the sauce a little bit, I like to add in 1/3 cup of the water that the pasta was boiling in, so I just reserve that to the side. I give this a stir, and as you see, it does thin out the sauce magically. Now I'm adding in the drained spaghetti, and I am going to stir this all together and just incorporate it in. Then it is time to serve it up. This has the perfect amount of lemon flavor in it. It is not overpowering at all. This really is a wonderful recipe to make, especially during these hot months in the summertime. Now we're going to be making this Mexican beefy and potato recipe. This one's a hit. So I'm going to begin by peeling and dicing 2 yellow potatoes, 1 onion, and 1 green bell pepper into smaller pieces. After I am finished with that, I'm going to set those to the side. Over to my pan, I have a pound of some ground beef in there. I'm just going to cook this ground beef until it's about 80% of the way cooked. Now that it is 80% of the way cooked, if yours is super greasy, go ahead and remove some of the grease. But now I'm adding in the vegetables that we just chopped up, and I'm going to stir them around for about 2 to 3 minutes. After letting that cook together for a few minutes, it's time to add in your tablespoon of minced garlic. Let the garlic become fragrant. Then you're going to add in the rest of your ingredients. So you'll want to add in 8 ounces of tomato sauce, a cup and a half of beef broth, and then for all of the seasonings I'm just doing a half a teaspoon of salt, just a dash of pepper, 1 bay leaf, a teaspoon of cumin, and then a teaspoon of coriander. You're going to stir this all together and then put the lid on top and let this simmer on your stove for about 10 minutes. Here we are 10 minutes later. I'm going to remove the lid, give this a really good stir, and you see all the liquid in there. You pretty much want that to evaporate, so let it simmer uncovered for an additional 10 minutes. And then once it looks something like this, remove the bay leaf, and then it is ready to serve. You could really serve this meal however you choose to do so, but what we like to do is serve it with some white rice and then some crispy tortillas on the side with guacamole, cherry tomatoes, and lime and cilantro. This is so delicious. We are huge chicken Alfredo fans in this family, so now that's what we're making. I have 3 chicken breasts right here. I sliced them in half horizontally so it appears as more. I'm seasoning them on both sides with salt, pepper, dried oregano, and dried basil. You could use less or more chicken depending on your preference for this recipe, but I did want plenty of leftovers, so that's why I did so much chicken. Over to my pan, I have a tablespoon of olive oil and a tablespoon of butter. I'm going to cook this chicken for about 3 to 4 minutes on each side, or until it reaches 165 degrees internally. Once it does, I'm removing it to a separate plate and setting this plate to the side. It's time to begin on the sauce now. I just melted down my 4 tablespoons of butter and then added in a tablespoon of minced garlic. Stir the garlic around until it's fragrant, and then add in 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Whisk the flour around until it's a nice golden color, and then you will slowly add in a 1.5 cups of heavy cream. While you're adding it in, make sure you do whisk so there are no clumps in the end, and then slowly add in a 1.5 cups of regular milk. Let this simmer on your stove until the sauce thickens. While that is happening, I'm going to boil up my 1 pound of Italian fettuccine noodles. You could use a pound of any noodle you like for this recipe though. So now that my sauce has thickened to the way that I like it to be, I just added in a little shake of some salt and pepper, 1 cup of Parmesan cheese, and you're going to whisk this all together until the sauce thickens up. One thing that I do like to do that is definitely optional, I don't do this all the time, is add in about 1/4 cup of some fresh basil. I do have a little basil plant in my kitchen, so that's why I like to add it in occasionally, but if you don't have basil, don't worry about that. This is the finished product. This chicken Alfredo is so simple to throw together, and it is absolutely delicious. I just paired it with a really simple side salad on the side. I like to put a mixture of spinach and romaine in my salad with some sliced almonds, cranberries, cherry tomatoes, and avocado. I love coconut curry, and if you've never tried it or made it before, do not let this intimidate you. It is very simple. To my Dutch oven, I added a tablespoon of some olive oil with 1 medium-sized diced up white onion. I'm going to let this onion soften for about 3 to 5 minutes. It's time to add in your 3 cloves of minced garlic and tablespoon of minced ginger. Stir this around until the garlic becomes fragrant, and then you're going to add in your seasonings. So I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of some curry powder, 3 tablespoons of red curry paste, and then 2 teaspoons of some ground coriander. Stir this around for about a minute or 2, then you're going to add in an additional tablespoon of some olive oil with 1 sliced up red bell pepper. Mix all of this together and then let your red bell pepper cook down for about 2 minutes. Now I'm going to be adding in my cubed up 1 pound of some chicken breast. You're going to cook this chicken breast until it's about 90% of the way cooked, not completely cooked. So now that it is about 90% of the way cooked, I'm adding in 1/2 of a lime with 1 can of some coconut milk. Lastly, add in 2 tablespoons of some brown sugar. The brown sugar is optional, but I do think it adds a lot of great flavor. You just wait and see. You're going to stir everything to combine and let the chicken completely cook through. Now that my chicken is completely cooked through, I added in 1/4 cup of some fresh cilantro. The cilantro is definitely optional, but my family loves cilantro. I gave this a really good stir, and then it's ready to serve. Here's my plate of food. I just served this over a bed of some white rice with some additional lime and cilantro on top. This has extremely good flavor. If you've never tried coconut curry, I 100% recommend this recipe. This pesto tortellini is one of those things where my sister always asks me to make it when she's over. So to get this one started, I poured a tablespoon of olive oil in this pan, then added my cubed pound of chicken breast with a little bit of salt, and then 1/4 cup of these sun-dried tomatoes. You're going to cook this chicken completely through at this point. Now that my chicken is all cooked up, I'm just going to remove it to a separate plate, set the plate aside, cover it with some aluminum foil to keep it warm. So now we're going to cook our asparagus. In my same pan, I added an additional tablespoon of some olive oil with my pound of trimmed asparagus, an additional fourth a cup of sun-dried tomatoes, and a fourth a cup of water. You're going to cook this for about 5 to 10 minutes until the asparagus is nice and tender. While I do have our asparagus cooking up, I'm going to take this time and boil my 9 ounces of cheese tortellini. Now that I have my asparagus to the tenderness that I like it to be, I added back in my chicken that I cooked up previously with a third a cup of some basil pesto. You could add more or less pesto in, just depending on your preference. Also, if you want to add more chicken in because you have a larger amount of people you're feeding, go ahead and cook up more chicken. This recipe is very, very easy to kind of make your own. I added in 8 ounces of cherry tomatoes that I sliced in half. With my cooked up tortellini, I gave it a good stir, then it's ready to serve. Here is my bowl of food. I just sprinkled some Parmesan cheese on top. This has amazing flavor, and if you're a pesto fan, I think you'd love it. Now we're making this mushroom, chicken, spinach packed lasagna. To begin, I'm going to be dicing up 1 white onion and thinly slicing 8 ounces of mushrooms. To my saucepan with about 2 tablespoons of some hot olive oil in it, I added my mushrooms and onions. Next, you're going to add about a tablespoon of some minced garlic. For the seasonings, I'm adding a teaspoon of dried basil and oregano, and just about a pinch of some crushed red pepper flakes. I didn't add a ton of crushed red pepper, but if you want it to have a little bit more of a kick, some more spice, go ahead and add some more red pepper in. I also added a pinch of some salt. You're going to let this cook together for about 5 to 8 minutes. Stir it pretty frequently. Now that the liquid from the mushrooms has evaporated and my veggies are softened, you're going to add 2 cups of some baby spinach in and 2 cups of shredded chicken. I just boiled my chicken up in the Instant Pot and then shredded it from there. You're going to stir this all around and let the spinach wilt down. After I added the veggie and chicken mixture into a separate bowl, set that bowl to the side, we're going to begin to work on the sauce now. So into the same saucepan I was using, I just added 2.5 cups of some chicken broth with 1.5 cups of some whole milk. Next, you're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of some nutmeg and just a pinch of salt. You're going to stir this around and bring it up to a simmer. Now that our sauce is up to a slow simmer, I'm going to slowly add in 1/4 cup of some all-purpose flour. This is really going to thicken this sauce up. You do want to make sure you add the flour in slowly, just to make sure that you don't have any clumps in the end. I continued to whisk the sauce for about 5 to 10 minutes until it started to thicken up. So now that it is starting to get thicker, I added my 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese in. I'm going to let the cheese melt down and then your sauce is finished. Assembling this lasagna is very simple. I have a 2-quart baking dish right here. I poured some sauce down on the bottom so the noodles don't stick, about a cup of sauce I'd say. And then I added some oven-ready lasagna noodles, or you could use just normal lasagna noodles, whatever your preference is. Some of the chicken and veggie mixture, and then on each layer I added about 3/4 cup of some mozzarella cheese. There's a total of 3 layers. Cover with some aluminum foil and bake in the oven on 375 degrees for 25 minutes, and then uncover it and bake it for an additional 15 minutes. Here's the finished product. My husband said this was one of his favorite lasagnas of all time. This just had some really great flavor. I served this with some steamed peas. I had all the right intentions on making a salad to go on the side on that night, but I was too tired when it came down to it. For as much as I absolutely love macaroni and cheese, I cannot believe this is my first time showing you a macaroni and cheese recipe. So to get this one started, I am going to whisk one egg up and then set it to the side. Don't knock this recipe until you try it. The egg actually makes homemade macaroni and cheese really smooth and creamy. But to my pot of boiling water, I'm going to add 16 ounces of macaroni noodles. You're going to cook these noodles until they're about 3 minutes away from being done. So not quite done yet. You want them a little bit hard still. But to this large pot, I melted 1/4 a cup of butter, and then I added 1/4 a cup of flour in. I'm going to whisk this all together until the flour is a nice golden color. Add in your 2½ cups of whole milk at this point, along with 1.5 teaspoons of ground mustard. The ground mustard adds so much great flavor. Whisk this all together and then bring it up to a gentle simmer, and let this simmer while you whisk it frequently for about 5 minutes to thicken it up. So now that your sauce has thickened, go ahead and remove about 1/4 a cup of it and whisk it into the egg that we cracked earlier. And then once your egg looks something like this, you are going to pour it into the sauce mixture that we just made up and then stir it in. Now it's time for my favorite part, the cheese part, of course. I added 4 cups of shredded sharp cheddar cheese in. I am going to whisk it in to let the cheese melt down. And then once the cheese has melted down, you are going to add in the remainder of your seasonings. So about 1/2 teaspoon of seasoning salt, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Give this a stir to stir in your seasonings. Now you'll be adding in the drained macaroni noodles that we cooked up earlier. Go ahead and stir those noodles in so they become really super duper cheesy. And then once they are nice and cheesy like this, you are going to add the macaroni noodles into your greased 9x13 baking dish, or I'm just using a large round baking dish. After I spread it out as even as possible, I'm adding 1 cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese over the top. This will bake on 350 degrees for about 20 minutes or until the cheese on the top is melty. This is the perfect macaroni and cheese. It has just the right amount of creaminess and richness. It is absolutely divine. Trust me, you gotta try this one. Now we're making mushrooms and gravy pork chops. To get this one started, I have 8 ounces of white mushrooms. I'm going to clean them and then slice them into smaller pieces. I'm using 4 medium thick pork chops for this recipe. You could use thinner or thicker pork chops, whatever your preference is. Just adjust the cooking time. I'm just seasoning them on both sides with onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. Over to my saucepan, I have a tablespoon of melted butter and a tablespoon of hot olive oil in there. I'm adding all of our pork chops, and I'm going to cook these pork chops for a few minutes on each side or until they're completely cooked through. I do want to mention pork chops do tend to cook pretty quickly, so just keep an eye on them. After they are through cooking, I'm just removing them to a separate plate and setting the plate to the side. To begin to work on the mushroom gravy now, I left all the oil and the bits in my pan from the pork chops. I added an additional tablespoon of butter with the mushrooms, and I'm going to cook these mushrooms for about 5 minutes on a higher heat until they look something like this. Now is the time you're going to add in your 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour and stir it around for a minute or so. The rest of the ingredients that I'm going to be tossing in is a cup and a half of chicken broth and then a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. Whisk this together until it starts to thicken up, and then you're going to place the lid on top and let this simmer with the lid on for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then take the lid off and let it continue to simmer for 2 to 3 minutes until it looks something like this. It will be thick at this point and then ready to serve. You could really pair these pork chops with anything you could imagine. I chose to serve them with a side salad, and then this rice. I've been really liking to make this rice recently. It's so easy to throw together. I made sure to pour plenty of the gravy all over the rice and the pork chops. These taco stuffed peppers are mega good, and then they're also lower carb. So if you're looking for a lower carb option, this recipe is so good. I have 4 green bell peppers, or you could use any color bell pepper you like. I sliced them in half, and now I'm removing the seeds and everything from the inside. I placed the bell pepper halves in my 9x13 baking dish, and now I'm pouring 1/4 cup of water in there. These are going to go in my preheated oven to 350 degrees to start softening while I work on the rest of the ingredients. So in my pan, I have a pound of ground beef. I'm just cooking it up once it is through cooking. If your ground beef is extra greasy, go ahead and remove any excess grease. But now I just added 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning with 1/4 cup of water. Mix this all together to combine. To give this extra flavor and creaminess, I'm adding in 1/2 cup of salsa. You could really use any type of salsa you like. And then 1/3 cup of sour cream. Stir this all together and let the sour cream melt down. The last thing you'll add in is 1 can of drained and rinsed pinto beans, or you could use black beans, whatever your preference is. Give this a really good stir, and now it's time to stuff our bell peppers. So I pulled the bell peppers out of the oven, and now you're just going to place a little scoop of that bean and beefy mixture in each of the bell pepper halves. After I sprinkled plenty of Colby Jack cheese on top, this is going to go back in my oven to bake on 350 for about 25 to 30 minutes, or until the cheese is melty and the bell peppers are nice and tender. This is my plate of food. I sprinkled it with plenty of cilantro, iceberg lettuce, served it with guacamole and taco sauce. These peppers are so good, and that taco meat on the inside is 100% delicious. Now we're making oven baked chicken parm. You might have seen me make this previously on my channel, but I love making it for my family, so I'm going to show you how to do it. Anyways, on my cutting board right here, I added 4 large chicken breasts. I sliced them in half horizontally, so now it appears as 8 chicken breasts. I'm going to place them in my large gallon-sized Ziploc bag, just like this. I did this in batches so the chicken doesn't overcrowd, and then you will bang it with a rolling pin or a meat mallet until the chicken is even in size. This is going to make the chicken super tender in the end. I made sure to spray my sheet pan with plenty of nonstick spray, and then I set it to the side. We're going to be working on the coating now for the chicken. In this one bowl, I added 1.5 cups of panko breadcrumbs, along with 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese, a dash of salt and pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, and then a dash of garlic powder. Stir this all together. In my blue bowl, I'm cracking 2 eggs in and then whisk those eggs all together. Now it's time to coat the chicken, so I'm just grabbing one of the chicken pieces, dip it really well into the egg mixture, and then coat it in the panko mixture super duper well. You want to make sure it is completely coated in the panko and the Parmesan, and then place it onto your sheet pan. My chicken baked in the oven on 450 degrees for about 25 minutes. While the chicken is baking away in the oven, we are going to start on the marinara sauce and the noodles. So I'm just using this jar of marinara sauce to make everything easy. I poured it into my pot and I let it warm through. And now into this pot of boiling water, I added a pound of fettuccine noodles, or you could use spaghetti noodles, just whatever you have on hand. I let those cook away while my chicken was cooking, but after the 25 minutes of cooking the chicken in the oven, I flipped it and then I poured a little bit of the marinara sauce that we had in the pot on top, and then I placed a slice of mozzarella cheese on top of that. I placed this back in the oven to bake for an additional 3 minutes, and then I put the broiler on for the end for an additional minute. I served my baked chicken parmesan with a side salad and garlic toast. If you've never tried baked chicken parmesan like this, I really do think you'd love it. This is kind of like one of the go-to items in my house that I make when I don't really know what I'm going to cook for dinner. Now we're going to be making these teriyaki turkey rice bowls. So to get this one started, I have 2 heads of broccoli that I cut, along with about 4 carrots that I finely grated. Now over to my pan on the stove, I'm adding 1 pound of ground turkey in, along with 1 diced up onion. Cook the ground turkey until it's about 90% of the way cooked. While our turkey is cooking, I'm going to start on the sauce. So in this little bowl, I added a half a cup of low sodium soy sauce, a fourth a cup of water, a half a tablespoon of red wine vinegar, a tablespoon of brown sugar, and a tablespoon of normal sugar. And then you are going to whisk this all together and then set it to the side. You'll need it for the end. Now we're going to start on the cornstarch slurry. So in this bowl, I have a tablespoon of water. To the water, I added a tablespoon of cornstarch, and then you are going to whisk this together to combine the cornstarch with the water, and then set this to the side. Now that our turkey is about 90% of the way cooked, I added in a tablespoon of minced garlic and ginger. I let them become fragrant, and now it's time to add in the carrots along with the broccoli that we cut up earlier. Stir it around and let the broccoli cook until it starts to get soft. You might have to add in about 3 tablespoons of water to help the broccoli cook. After about 7 minutes of cooking my broccolis to the softness that I like it to be, so I added in the sauce along with the cornstarch slurry that we made up. I gave this a really good stir and I let this simmer on my stove for a couple of minutes to thicken the sauce. Once the sauce thickened, I served it up over a bed of brown rice with sesame seeds over the top. This is a really unique type of meal. I've never had anything like this before. It is super duper good. We really loved it. Now we're making this taco chicken bake. So to get this one started, you will want to combine your 9 thawed dinner rolls out and then place them on a greased surface so it doesn't stick. And then go ahead and roll this out into a large rectangle. Once our dough got to be a large, thin rectangle, I placed it on my sheet pan lined with parchment paper. And now in the center of our dough, I added 1.5 cups of black beans that I did drain and rinse. Next, add your 2 cups of chicken. I'm using this fajita seasoned rotisserie chicken I found at Walmart, but you could use any type of cooked cubed chicken that you like. You could cook it yourself, or you could use a normal rotisserie chicken. Really, whatever type of chicken you like, go ahead and use right now. After I placed our chicken on there, I'm sprinkling a tablespoon of taco seasoning over the top. Next, add your half a cup of salsa. You could use any type of salsa you like or have on hand. And then after that, go ahead and sprinkle on 1 cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. It's time to start making cuts about 1.5 inches apart along the sides of the dough. This is always my favorite part. It's time to start braiding it now. So you will first fold the top in, and then the strips on the side, you will overlap them over each other just like this. The last couple things you'll do before placing this in the oven is spray olive oil spray over the top, or you could brush olive oil over the top and then sprinkle 1/4 cup of shredded cheddar cheese on it. This will bake on 350 degrees for about 30 to 35 minutes or until it's golden. Here's my plate of food. I love serving this with my favorite taco toppings, so I did a little bit of salsa on the side, sour cream, cherry tomatoes, cilantro, and lime. This has extremely bold, delicious flavor on the inside. This is kind of just like the perfect simple dinner to make. I think these pizza pockets will really impress you, so to begin, I'm rolling out one of my thawed dinner rolls on my greased cutting board as thin as I could get it, and then it is time to add in our toppings. So for this particular one, I'm adding a little bit of Parmesan cheese, and then I added pineapple chunks, sliced ham, mozzarella cheese, more Parmesan, and then a dash of Italian seasoning. You will roll it up and fold in the seam. You could add any toppings inside the center of these pizza pockets though, so I kind of just made them however we wanted to on that particular night. After I have all of our pizza pockets on our cutting board, I'm spraying the tops of them with a little bit of olive oil spray. This will bake on 400 degrees for about 12 minutes or until they are beautifully golden brown. These pizza pockets are so cheesy, melt in your mouth, and scrumptious on the inside. We like to serve them with a little bit of warm marinara sauce to dip them in on the side. These are absolutely so simple to make. My daughter actually helped me make a few of them herself. Now we're getting started on these ranch chicken avocado burritos. So to begin, in my large Ziploc bag right here, I'm adding 2 large chicken breasts that I sliced in half horizontally so it appears as 4 chicken breasts. I do like to cut my chicken like that just so it cooks up a lot quicker. Anyways, to the bag, I'm adding 1.5 tablespoons of taco seasoning, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of lime juice, and 1/2 cup of fresh cilantro. I gave this a really good shake, and then I let this marinate in my fridge for about 1 to 2 hours. If you don't have time to let this marinate, you definitely could skip that step. Now it's time to begin to cook up our chicken, so I'm using my grill pan. If you don't have a grill pan, I totally understand. You could use a regular pan on the stove, or you could cook your chicken up on the barbecue grill outside. So after I placed the chicken down on my pan, I cooked it on each side until my chicken reached 165 degrees internally, and then I removed it to a separate plate and cut it up. So now it's time to assemble our burritos. I have a large burrito-sized tortilla right here. I added a little bit of Monterey Jack cheese to the bottom, and then some of the chicken that we cut up, along with sliced avocado, fresh cilantro, and then a little bit of ranch. On the very top, I topped it with more cheese, and then I rolled it up to the best of my ability. We do want the cheese to be nice and melty in these burritos. So back over to the pan that we cooked the chicken in, I oiled it a little bit and then I let the pan get hot, and I cooked these burritos for a couple of minutes on each side, and then they were ready to serve. These burritos are so good. My mom actually made burritos just like this when I was growing up, and I would devour them. They are amazing. My entire family enjoys them. Now we're getting started on the easiest tortellini bake ever. To get this one started, in my pot of boiling water, I'm adding about 5 cups of frozen cheese tortellini in. I cooked this tortellini according to the package directions. Once it was completely cooked, I removed it and I strained it. After I strained it, I added the tortellini back into the pot that I cooked it in. Next, you will be wanting to add in your 24 ounces of marinara sauce. You could use any type of marinara sauce you like or have on hand. Give this a really good stir to combine the tortellini with the marinara sauce, and then you will remove it from the stove. I have my casserole dish right here. I'm spraying it with plenty of nonstick spray, and then I added that tortellini right in there, spread it out as even as possible, and then you will top it with about a cup of mozzarella cheese and a fourth a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. This will go into the oven to bake on 350 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes or until the cheese is nice and melty. This is definitely a pantry staple type of meal in our home, just because when I don't really know what I'm going to cook for dinner, I typically always have these ingredients on hand and it comes together in no time at all. Now we're making these creamy chicken taquitos, so to get this one started, in my big bowl right here, I have about 3 cups of cooked shredded chicken. To the chicken, I'm adding a half a cup of salsa. You could use any brand, any type of salsa you like. A third a cup of sour cream, and you might see my little helper in the background, Macy, she's sleeping on the job. Next, I added in 5 ounces of softened cream cheese, along with 1 cup of fresh spinach. The spinach is optional, and don't knock it until you try it. It's actually really good in this recipe. And then I gave it a stir, and then lastly I added in 1 cup of Mexican style cheese. I gave this a stir until everything was well combined. Then I set this mixture to the side. Now I have a damp paper towel right here, and I'm adding about 12 to 15 of these corn tortillas in it, and I'm going to microwave it for about 2 minutes. This is going to help the tortillas so they don't crack when we go and roll them. Now it's time to fill our tortillas up. So I'm using a cookie scoop to make this extra easy, but I'm pretty much placing about 3 tablespoons of the chicken filling inside of each corn tortilla and then rolling it up. It can't get any easier than this. Over to the pan on my stove, I'm adding about a half a cup of vegetable oil right in there. I let the oil get hot. I knew it was hot when I added in a little bit of the chicken filling and it started to bubble up. But I'm going to cook these on each side for a couple of minutes or until they're a nice golden color. I do want to let you know, if you didn't want to use vegetable oil, you could use other types of oil to cook these taquitos in, like olive oil or canola oil. Or if you didn't want to use any oil at all, you could always cook these in the air fryer. I did make these in batches just so they wouldn't overcrowd my pan, and here's the finished product. I topped mine with tomatoes, jalapeno, cilantro, sour cream, and lime. These are perfectly creamy on the inside, and they have a wonderful shell on the outside. Now we're making this creamy pesto coated chicken. On my cutting board right here, I have 2 large chicken breasts. I'm going to slice each of those chicken breasts in half horizontally like this. This is going to, of course, make your chicken thinner, so it will cook a lot quicker, and your chicken will be so tender in the end, I promise. Now on my wooden cutting board, I am going to dice up my 3 Roma tomatoes along with 1 onion into smaller pieces. I'm going to set these veggies to the side. Now over to the pan on my stove, I have 2 tablespoons of hot olive oil in there. I added our chicken, and I did make sure to season the chicken on both sides with plenty of salt and pepper. Now that our chicken is completely cooked through, I removed it to a separate plate, covered this plate with aluminum foil so it could stay warm. Then I set it to the side. In the same pan that we cooked our chicken in, I added our diced onion along with 3/4 cup of chicken broth. I scraped all of those flavorful bits off of the bottom of my pan, and I let this simmer for a couple of minutes. After it was finished simmering, I added in our half a cup of heavy cream along with a dash more salt and pepper. I brought this up to a simmer. Once this was simmering, I added in our 1/4 cup of basil pesto along with a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese and the tomatoes that we diced up earlier. I let this cook together and I let the cheese melt down for a couple of minutes. At this point, this is what your sauce will be looking like. If you like thinner sauce, this is perfect, but we like thicker sauce in our house. So I added in a cornstarch slurry. It was just a tablespoon of cornstarch and a tablespoon of water whisked together. Then I added it in, and as you see, the sauce thickened up instantly. Now I'm going to add back in our chicken to heat through, and then this is ready to serve. If you're a pesto fan, you will devour this dinner. You will go back for seconds and thirds like I did. I served it over a bed of egg noodles, but you could serve this over rice, cauliflower rice, really whatever you want. This dinner is so rich and flavorful. Now we're making muffin tin pizza bombs. To get this one started, of course, I have my pizza crust. I unrolled it on my cutting board, and then I am going to be cutting it into about 12 different squares. After I greased my muffin tin with plenty of nonstick spray, I grabbed one of the pizza dough squares that we cut out, and then you'll want to make sure you stretch it so that all the ingredients will fit in. And then I added a teaspoon of pizza sauce along with a little bit of mozzarella cheese and 2 pepperonis, and then I rolled it up. You could really add any type of toppings you like inside of the pizza dough though. I really love this mixture that goes over the top of our pizza bomb, so now we're going to be making it. In this bowl, I have 4 tablespoons of melted butter. I added a teaspoon of Italian seasoning with a half a teaspoon of garlic powder and crushed red pepper flakes. The last thing I added was 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. I mixed it all together, and then you'll just brush it over the top of each of the pizza bombs. You kind of want to do it generously because it is that good. Bake this on 375 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes or until they are golden. Here's the finished pizza bombs. I love serving mine with hot marinara sauce on the side. If you pack a lunch or anything like that, these would fit perfectly in a lunch box. They are so delicious, especially that buttery mixture on the very top sends these pizza bombs out of this world. Now we're making these Italian style meatball subs. Here are some of the ingredients that we typically like to try to keep on hand. Breadcrumbs or panko breadcrumbs I like to keep on hand just because they have an extremely long shelf life and you could throw them in so many different recipes. Eggs, we always have eggs on hand. Next, hoagie rolls, or you could use any type of bread you'd like for this recipe. And then marinara sauce, it's very inexpensive and again it has a super duper long shelf life, so always keep that on hand. And then Parmesan cheese and frozen ground beef. To get this recipe started, I threw my 1 pound of ground beef into my mixing bowl. Next, add in your 1 egg along with 3 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, a half a cup of Italian style breadcrumbs, and then for the seasonings, this is quite a bit of seasonings, but they're so flavorful. A teaspoon of dried oregano and basil, half a teaspoon of onion and garlic powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt and pepper. Mix this all together. Now that we're through combining our meatball mixture, I am going to be rolling these into little meatballs. You could roll them into whatever size you like. I made about 15 total. Over to the pan on my stove, I have about 2 tablespoons of hot olive oil in there. I added my meatballs in and I browned them on each side. You do not need to cook them through at this point, just brown them because they will continue to cook. Here in a minute, you just wait and see, but now that our meatballs are browned, I'm removing any excess grease in the pan just with a spatula and a paper towel. I find that this little trick works really well for this recipe. But now into the same pan that we browned the meatballs, I'm adding 2 cups of our marinara sauce, and I'm going to put the lid on top and let this simmer for about 15 minutes. This will completely cook our meatballs through. While our meatballs are simmering, we're going to prepare our hoagie rolls. So I have about 4 hoagie rolls right here. I cut them open and I'm spraying the inside of them with avocado oil spray, or you could use butter or any oil. I placed them under my broiler to get nice and crispy. Now that they're crispy and my meatballs are cooked through, I'm placing about 3 to 4 meatballs with the sauce inside of each of the hoagie rolls. Then I placed plenty of mozzarella cheese over the top. I put this under my broiler for a couple of minutes to melt the cheese. Here's dinner ready to enjoy. These meatball subs are some of the best meatball subs I've ever had, I promise. The meatballs are packed full of flavor and they're not dry at all. The bread is perfectly crisp and you can't go wrong with mozzarella cheese. I served it with a side salad with tomatoes, lettuce, carrots, and ranch. Now we're making these taco stuffed shells. This recipe's delicious. It always impresses me. So the first ingredient we have here is Fiesta blend cheese. I always keep cheese on hand in the refrigerator, or you could put it in your freezer to last longer. Next, these jumbo shells. I like to buy pasta from my grocery store when it goes on sale like this, so I always have pasta on hand. It lasts quite a while to just keep it in your pantry. Next, taco seasoning. I buy the big container like this, either from Costco or Walmart, and it lasts our family like 6 months, so it is a great buy. Next, salsa. Salsa is nutritious and it's one of those pantry staples that will last in your pantry for months and months. Next, enchilada sauce. Enchilada sauce is full of flavor, and again, it's an item that will last for quite a while. And then cream cheese and ground beef. Let's get this recipe started. Over to the big pan on my stove, I added in my 1 pound of ground beef. I'm breaking the ground beef up and I'm going to cook it through. While the ground beef is cooking away, over to my large pot of boiling water, I'm going to add about 16 to 20 of these jumbo shells in, and I'm going to cook them according to the box instructions. Now that my ground beef has cooked through, I removed any excess grease from the pan. Then I added in a cup of salsa along with 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning. I gave this a really good stir. Then I added in 1/4 cup of water. I let this simmer on my stove for a few minutes. Once it was through simmering, I added in my 4 tablespoons of cream cheese that I cubed. I gave this a really good stir to melt the cream cheese down. Now we're going to begin to assemble our stuffed shells. So I greased my 9x13 baking dish with nonstick spray. Now I'm adding in half of the can of enchilada sauce. I spread it out evenly. Now I'm grabbing each of the shells and I'm scooping about a scoop of the taco mixture right in there. I'm using a cookie scoop to make it easier. Drizzle the top of the shells with the remaining enchilada sauce, then sprinkle about a cup of Mexican-style cheese over the top. This is going to bake in a preheated oven to 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. We like to top ours with whatever taco toppings we have on hand. So on this night, we did sliced avocado, sour cream, cilantro, and lime. These are packed full of flavor and kind of a fun twist on regular tacos. Now we're making this 1-pot ham and noodle dish. To begin, to my large pot on the stove, I added about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Once my oil was hot, I added in my 1 diced up white onion, along with about 1 pound of pre-cooked ham that I diced. Ham is really inexpensive, so if you're on a budget and trying to save money on your grocery bill, I definitely suggest you cooking with ham. I gave this a stir and I let the ham turn a nice golden color. It took about 5 to 7 minutes. Now I'm going to be tossing in about 1 tablespoon of minced garlic along with our seasonings, 1/2 teaspoon of salt and pepper, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley and basil, and then 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. I gave this a stir. All of those seasonings will give this dish great flavor. Now I'm adding in 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. You are going to give this a stir so the flour no longer looks white. Once the flour is well incorporated, you are going to slowly add in your 4 cups cups of chicken broth. You do want to add it in slowly and stir it after every time you add some in. This is going to help the flour not become clumpy. Now that we've added all of our broth in, go ahead and add your 2 cups of milk in and give this a really good stir. Bring this mixture up to a simmer, then add your 16 ounces of penne pasta in, or you could use any type of shaped pasta that you like. You are going to let this simmer on your stove for about 15 minutes or until the noodles are cooked. You do want to make sure you stir this frequently while it's simmering, and if the liquid line gets too low, go ahead and add about a cup of water in at a time so your pasta actually does cook. Now that we have our noodles tender, we are going to add in our 2 cups of frozen sweet peas. Let the peas cook in with the pasta for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then you are going to stir in your 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. Let the cheese melt down, and then it is ready to serve. You really do get the best of both worlds with this dinner. It is so easy to make, but yet it is so flavorful and delicious. I don't cook with ham often, but I really need to start cooking with it more often now just because it really is so budget friendly and it's full of flavor and protein. Now we're getting started on our meatless meal, the Southwestern skillet. So to begin, we are going to cut up our veggies, 1 red bell pepper and a yellow onion. If you want to use other veggies for this recipe, you certainly can. Now over to the pan on my stove, I have about 2 tablespoons of hot olive oil in there. I added those veggies and I'm going to cook them until they are soft. It took about 7 minutes. Now that they are soft, I added in a tablespoon of minced garlic. I gave this a stir and let the garlic become fragrant. Now I'm going to be adding in our 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning along with 1 cup of Orzo pasta. If you don't normally cook with Orzo pasta, it's kind of like a mixture between rice and pasta. It really is good. Now I'm adding in 1 can of drained and rinsed black beans, a drained can of corn, and 2 cups of chicken broth. Next I'm going to toss in 1 can of rotel. I gave this a really good stir and I let this simmer covered on my stove for about 15 to 20 minutes or until the orzo was cooked, and I did stir this frequently while it was simmering. Now that our orzo has cooked and most of the liquid has absorbed, I'm going to add in about a 1/2 cup of Mexican style cheese. If you don't care for cheese, you certainly do not need to add the cheese in, and you can make this dairy free very easily. But here's my plate of food. I topped mine with fresh avocado slices, cilantro, and lime. This has to be one of my all-time favorite meatless meals just because it really is filling. It has quite a bit of protein in it, and we really did not miss the meat in this meal. Now we're making this Hawaiian chicken, and my husband seriously goes crazy over this recipe. We're going to start on the marinade first. In this little bowl, I added 3 tablespoons of minced garlic, along with 1/4 cup of pineapple juice, 1/4 cup of low sodium soy sauce, 3 tablespoons of ketchup, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Yes, I know I kind of spilled the vegetable oil a little bit in the bowl, but that's okay. And then lastly, add in 2 tablespoons of honey and then whisk this all together. In this large gallon-sized Ziploc bag, I have about 8 chicken tenderloins. To the chicken tenderloins, go ahead and add the marinade that we just made up. Mix everything together after you zip the bag up, and then let this sit in your refrigerator for at least an hour. What I typically like to do is make that up in the morning, let it sit in my fridge all day, and then cook it up in the evening. But once it's almost through marinating, I'm going to start on the coconut rice in my Instant Pot. So I added a tablespoon of olive oil to my Instant Pot along with 1 cup of rinsed jasmine rice, a 1/2 cup of water, and then a 1/2 cup of coconut milk. You're just kind of going to mix everything together in the Instant Pot, put the lid on top, set the valve to sealing, and then just press the rice button. I have always wanted one of these cast iron grill pans, and I finally got myself one a little while ago, so I was just overly excited to use it for this recipe. But if you don't have a grill pan, you could just use a regular pan on the stove or use a barbecue grill outside. I made sure to grease my grill pan super well with oil, and then I made sure the pan was hot before I added the chicken. I cooked the chicken for about 3 to 6 minutes on each side, or until it was 165 degrees internally, and then I removed it to a separate plate and set the plate to the side. I made the chicken in a couple batches. I just didn't want to overcrowd my pan, but now that I'm finished cooking up the chicken, I actually cut up a pineapple on the side, and I'm just grilling up the pineapple, and I poured a little bit of the chicken marinade on the pineapple, so I made sure to cook the pineapple super well. I'm sure you could have guessed this, but we served our chicken over a bed of that coconut rice we made up in the Instant Pot. And then, of course, alongside of the pineapple, this chicken is so juicy and delicious. The marinade also makes it really extra tender, and all of the flavors together are phenomenal. Taco salads are extra perfect in the summertime, so now I'm going to show you my all-time favorite taco salad recipe. We're going to start on the chipotle dressing first. So in this bowl, I added a cup of mayonnaise along with the juice from 1 lime. All of the seasonings you're going to be adding in is 2 teaspoons of chili powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of cumin, a half a teaspoon of paprika, a fourth a teaspoon of chipotle powder, and then a dash of salt and pepper. If you want yours a little bit spicy, go ahead and add in 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne. And then you're also going to add in between 1/3 a cup of milk to a 1/2 a cup of milk, just depending on how thick you want it. Whisk it all together and then put it into a dressing container and let it chill in the refrigerator while you work on the rest of the stuff for your taco salads. The meat that we're using for our taco salads is ground beef, or you could use shredded chicken, or you could keep this meatless if you don't want to add meat, whatever your preference is. I just cooked my ground beef up on the stove, removed any of the excess grease, and now I'm adding about 1.5 tablespoons of taco seasoning in with 1/4 a cup of water and 1 can of drained and rinsed pinto beans. You're going to just mix this all together and let everything simmer for about 5 minutes on the stove. My all-time favorite lettuce mixture for these taco salads is actually a mix of romaine lettuce and spinach. I did quite a bit of lettuce just because we had my sister over for dinner on that night. I just put it into my salad spinner and I cleaned it off and then spun any excess water off. I love this salad spinner. If you don't have one, I actually have a similar one linked in my Amazon store. But anyways, after I'm finished with that, I am just going to remove any excess water in my salad spinner. For the rest of the veggies, I just cut up cherry tomatoes, avocado, and green onions. Now all you have to do is assemble your taco salad, so I just put on the bottom of my bowl that lettuce mixture along with the ground beef and beans, the cherry tomatoes, avocado, green onions, tortilla strips, and shredded cheese. I really do think what kicks these taco salads up a notch is that homemade Southwest Chipotle dressing. It really does have immense flavor. These are just great hearty salads to make. And then here's my daughter. She was just running around the kitchen while I made dinner on that night. This one's for all of my meatless meal friends out there. We are making this vegetable lo mein. So to begin, we are going to start on our veggies, of course. So I'm just cutting up 3 carrots, a bell pepper, an onion, and a head of broccoli. Now over to the pan on my stove, I added in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Once my oil was hot, I added those vegetables right into my pan. I'm going to cook them for about 5 to 7 minutes or until they get to my desired softness. Now we're going to start on the sauce while our vegetables are cooking. To this bowl, I added 2 tablespoons of brown sugar along with 3 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce and about 1/3 a cup of vegetable broth. I'm giving this a really good whisk and I'm going to set it to the side. In this pot of boiling water, I'm adding in our 8 ounces of lo mein noodles. If you can't find lo mein noodles at your grocery store, you could just use regular thin spaghetti noodles as a substitute. But now that our vegetables are good and soft, I'm going to add in our lo mein noodles that we just cooked up and drained. Now I'm going to add in the sauce that we made up a little bit earlier, along with a tablespoon of minced garlic. Give this a really good stir and let it simmer together for about 5 minutes, then it's ready to serve. Here's my bowl of food. I topped mine with sliced green onions and sesame seeds. This truly is better than restaurant quality. It has amazing flavor and it is extraordinarily easy to throw together. This one is a total hit for my family. Now we're making my favorite creamy white chicken enchiladas. So to begin, you're going to want about 3 cups of cooked shredded chicken for this recipe. I'm using my Instant Pot to cook my chicken, so I added the chicken in there along with a cup of water, put the lid on top, and I cooked this on high pressure for about 20 minutes. If you don't want to cook your chicken in the Instant Pot, you could always boil it, use a rotisserie chicken, or cook chicken up on the skillet on the stove. But while our chicken's cooking away, I'm going to start on the enchilada sauce. So I melted about 3 tablespoons of butter down in my pan, and then I added 3 tablespoons of flour once it was melted and a tablespoon of taco seasoning. I whisked this all together to combine. Once the flour was no longer looking white, I went ahead and I slowly whisked in our 2 cups of chicken broth. You do want to add it in slowly just to ensure that there are no clumps in the end. Now that our sauce is nice and smooth, I'm adding in a half a cup of Monterey Jack cheese. I let the cheese melt down, then I added in 1 cup of sour cream. I do have my heat off at this point. I also added in a 4-ounce can of diced green chilies. Those green chilies will add so much flavor to this recipe. I whisked this all together and then I took it off of the stove. Now that our chicken's out of the Instant Pot, I'm just shredding it up. I'm using my electric hand mixer, or you could use 2 forks to shred it up, or a meat masher, whatever you prefer. But now that our chicken's shredded, I'm adding in 5 ounces of cream cheese that I cubed. Our cream cheese was also softened, a half a cup of Monterey Jack cheese, and about a teaspoon of onion powder. Mix this all together to incorporate the cream cheese and the cheese into the chicken. Now to start assembling our enchiladas, I have my 9x13 baking dish right here. I'm spraying it with plenty of nonstick spray. Then you're going to add about a cup of that enchilada sauce down at the bottom of the baking dish. Spread it out as even as possible. On top of that enchilada sauce, you're going to place about 6 of these corn tortillas. I'm just placing them right next to each other like this. Over the corn tortillas, go ahead and spread that chicken mixture out evenly. Now over the top of the chicken layer, you are going to be adding 6 more corn tortillas. Then over the top of the corn tortillas, you're going to be pouring the remaining enchilada sauce. And then go ahead and spread that out evenly. Then you're going to be sprinkling a cup of Monterey Jack cheese over the top, and then this will bake on 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. We like to top our enchiladas with plenty of sliced avocado, cherry tomatoes, cilantro, and sour cream. These are not your basic enchiladas at all. They are full of flavor and so good. I also served them with homemade pinto beans. I actually showed in last week's video how I make those homemade pinto beans, so I'll go ahead and leave that video linked in my description box below for you. Now we're making this Doritos casserole, and I really think this one will impress you. In my bowl right here, I have 4 cups of shredded chicken. I just cooked my chicken up in the Instant Pot and then shredded it from there, but you could boil your chicken up on the stove or just buy a rotisserie chicken. To the chicken, I added 1 can of Rotel, a small can of diced green chilies, 1 drained can of corn, a drained and rinsed can of black beans, 1 can of cream of chicken soup, a 1/3 cup of sour cream, and then 1 cup of Mexican-style cheese, a tablespoon and a half of taco seasoning, and then you are going to stir this mixture all together to combine. Make sure you spray your 9x13 baking dish with plenty of nonstick spray, and then you'll add 2 little bags of nacho cheese Doritos. Just crush them up a little bit. It's pretty much the equivalent to 2 cups if you're wondering. And then on top of the Doritos, go ahead and add that chicken mixture we just made up. This will bake in a preheated oven to 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. Now that my casserole is out of the oven, you are going to sprinkle an additional 2 cups of Doritos on top. The last thing you'll add on top of the Doritos is a half a cup of Mexican-style cheese. This will bake in your oven for an additional 10 to 12 minutes or until the cheese is completely melted. We typically like to top ours with our favorite taco toppings. Today I topped mine with a little bit of jalapeno, fresh cilantro, sour cream, and cherry tomatoes. This casserole is so unique and fun. I really do think you'd love it. Now we're going to get started on this Italian sausage lower carb casserole. So on my cutting board, I'm just going to cut my red bell pepper into smaller pieces. Over to my pan on the stove, I have a tablespoon of hot olive oil in there. I added my bell pepper and I'm going to cook it for about 1 to 2 minutes or until it starts to soften. Once it does start to soften, you are going to add in 1 pound of Italian sausage. Cook the sausage through. Now that my sausage is completely cooked, I'm just removing any of the excess grease. Typically, sausage is kind of a more greasy type of meat, so make sure you do remove the grease for this one. After I'm finished with that, you will add in your 6 ounces of cubed cream cheese. I do have my heat off at this point. Stir the cream cheese around until it is melted down and combined with the sausage. In this large bowl, I just added that sausage mixture. Next, you'll add 6 cups of riced cauliflower. This is just frozen riced cauliflower. After that, you'll add in a half a cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese and then 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. Stir this all together. Over to my greased 9x13 baking dish, go ahead and add the casserole right in there and then spread it out as even as possible. Sprinkle the top with 1 cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. Cover this with aluminum foil and then this will bake in a preheated oven to 375 degrees for about 25 minutes. After 25 minutes of baking, remove it from the oven and then take the foil off and then bake it for an additional 10 minutes. I could probably give you 100 different reasons on why I love this casserole so much. It is definitely a favorite for me. If you're looking for a great lower carb meal idea, this one is for you. It has amazing bold flavor. It's also super duper filling. This one is a total hit in my family. Now we're making this kielbasa with pierogies, and this was my first time ever making pierogies. I am so excited to share how they turned out with you. So to begin, I am cutting my 14 ounces of kielbasa up into smaller pieces like this. Now for my vegetables, I'm slicing 1 red bell pepper, 1 yellow bell pepper, and 1 onion into smaller pieces. You could use more or less peppers depending on your preference. In this large bowl, after I added in our peppers and onions, I tossed in our kielbasa, and then it is time for our pierogies. I'm adding 20 of these frozen pierogies in. This is what the bag looks like if you're wondering. I just found them at the freezer section in my Walmart. They're almost like a dumpling filled with cheese. That's the best way I could describe them to you, but they are so good. You definitely want to try them. And then I added in 3 tablespoons of olive oil for the seasoning. Toss in a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of chili powder, and then half a teaspoon of onion and garlic powder. Give this a really good stir. And this is why I love sheet pan meals. They seriously can't get any easier than this. So after I lined my sheet pan with aluminum foil, I tossed that mixture right in there, and then I spread it out as even as possible on my sheet pan. This went into a preheated oven to 400 degrees for 15 minutes. After those 15 minutes of baking, I removed it from the oven, and then I flipped everything over carefully, and then I continued to bake this in my oven for an additional 15 minutes, or until the pierogies were nice and golden in color. Here's our dinner out of the oven, and this is my plate of food. I sprinkled the top of everything with fresh parsley, mainly to make it look pretty, but all of the bold flavors in this meal complement everything really nicely, and we were quite surprised on how much we enjoyed those pierogies. I am so glad I gave them a try. They are pretty good. Now we're making this veggie and herb crusted chicken. So to begin, I am starting on my potatoes. I'm going to be quartering them. You do want to make sure you use the little potatoes, so red potatoes, gemstone potatoes, or golden potatoes, but don't use russet potatoes because russet potatoes will not cook properly. So after I'm finished with my potatoes, I'm going to work on the coating for the chicken. In this little bowl, I added a half a cup of mayonnaise, and then add a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and then 2.5 tablespoons of this 1.5 ounce packet of core vegetable recipe mix. This has so much flavor in it. You will be shocked, I promise. Just do it, you won't regret it. And then stir this all together. It's time to add everything now to our sheet pan lined with parchment paper. So to one side, I added our potatoes. To the other side, add your 12 ounces of green beans that are trimmed. Next, drizzle your 2 tablespoons of olive oil over the top, and then add the remainder of the 1.5 ounce packet of the core vegetable recipe mix. Mix this all together to get the veggies coated in the oil and the seasoning. And then in the center of your sheet pan, you are going to be adding your 3 large chicken breasts. You do want to make sure you sliced your chicken breasts in half horizontally, so it will appear as like 6 chicken breasts now. This will help your chicken cook so much quicker in the oven. It will also make your chicken super tender. I love doing this with my chicken breasts. Now I'm sprinkling the top of the chicken with a dash of salt and pepper, and then you are going to be spreading the mixture that we made up all over the top of the chicken. This will bake in a preheated oven to 425 degrees for about 23 to 26 minutes, or until your chicken reaches 165 degrees internally. I cannot even begin to explain to you how phenomenal that chicken is. The coating on the chicken is perfect. It is so good. The vegetables are nice and tender. And then on the side, I just served it with some of this rice. I really like this quick and easy rice packet. It's really delicious. I really love making these cool chicken salad sandwiches, especially at this time of year. So to begin, I'm just going to slice up 4 stalks of celery along with a half a cup of grapes. You'll need about 3 cups of cooked shredded chicken for this recipe. I actually just used leftover chicken from the night before. I didn't quite use all of it for a recipe, but you could use canned chicken or rotisserie chicken, whatever you like. So to my shredded chicken, I added 1/3 cup of mayonnaise along with a tablespoon of mustard, and then the sliced celery and the grapes. Next, I added 1/4 cup of pre-cooked crumbled bacon. I do like adding the bacon in, but that's optional. You don't have to add it. And then I added 3 tablespoons of dried cranberries and then a little dash of salt and pepper. Stir this all together. You could serve this chicken salad alone, or you could put it in a crescent or sandwich buns, whatever you want to do. Go ahead and eat it up. It's absolutely delicious, and it's my favorite way of making chicken salad sandwich, but I just chose to serve it in these sandwich thins. I really do enjoy them. You can't knock these pizza quesadillas until you try them. They are so good and they're so much fun to make. It's kind of a fun twist on a normal quesadilla. So to my large tortilla, I added mozzarella cheese, I'd say about 3/4 cups of it, and then a dash of Italian seasoning to kind of give it the pizza flavor. And then for my topping, I chose to do pepperonis to make it a traditional type of pizza, but use any type of toppings you like. Over to the super hot pan on my stove, I added a little bit of butter. Once the butter melted down, I added my pizza quesadilla and I let it cook for a few minutes on each side to crisp up the tortilla and then to melt the cheese in the center. I love serving my pizza quesadillas with hot marinara sauce on the side to dip them in. Like I said before, these pizza quesadillas are so good. If you've never tried them, I really do suggest them. They make for the quickest dinner you could make up or a really quick lunch to enjoy. Now we're making this spinach and cheese ravioli bake. This is also our meatless meal for today. To the pan on my stove, I have a tablespoon of hot olive oil. To the oil, I added 4 cups of fresh spinach along with a dash of salt and pepper. You are going to let this spinach cook and wilt down. It should only take about 5 minutes. Spinach wilts down so easily. I do also want to mention, if you're not the biggest spinach fan in the world, you could totally skip the spinach step for this recipe. Now we're going to begin to assemble our ravioli bake. There's a total of 2 layers for this recipe. So the first layer, you are going to put half of your 24-ounce jar of marinara sauce down, spread it out as even as possible. There's a total of 20 ounces of ravioli for this recipe, so use half of the amount of ravioli for this layer. I chose to use the spinach and ricotta ravioli, but you could use any type of ravioli you like. Now I'm pouring all of the spinach over the top of the ravioli at this point. Next, you are going to sprinkle half of the 1.5 cups of Parmesan cheese over the top of the spinach. Next, pour half of the 2 cups of mozzarella cheese over that, and then repeat this for the second layer. The very last thing you will do is cover the top with aluminum foil, and this will bake in a preheated oven to 400 degrees for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then uncover it and bake it for an additional 5 to 10 minutes. This is another one of those go-to type of dinners that I like to make when I don't necessarily know what I'm going to make for dinner. Plus, my entire family devours this one. I served it alongside of a side salad and garlic toast. This meatless meal is a 10 out of 10. I have so many more videos like this on my channel, so make sure you're subscribed down below the video so you don't miss any more in the future, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.